This morning, Eddie's been talking about who will be involved and who won't be involved in the squad for the game against Manchester City. And you can take it from him. Ryan Fraser will play no part in the squad for this game.
Ryan is training with the under-21s. I made the decision to concentrate on the players that are committed to Newcastle. And for the benefit of the group, I've made that call.
Do you see him having any kind of future at this club?
I think that's a difficult one for me to answer because I'd never put a firm decision on that because life and football can change quickly. But I'd say at the moment, no, he doesn't.
Oof. I would say at the moment, no, he doesn't. Doesn't have a future at Newcastle United. Newcastle United at the moment, under Saudi ownership, under their new ownership, that's by the by, going places under Eddie Howe right now. And of course, doing so well in the Premier League. I'll come to you in a second, Simon. You and I have spoken about Ryan Fraser in the past. Martin, Eddie Howe, more than flexing a bit of muscle there.
It seems like he's just completely fed up with the player. I mean, there's been a huge past here. I mean, it was obviously Ryan Fraser's worst nightmare when Eddie Howe turned up in the first place. When you consider how their previous relationship was severed when he was at Bournemouth, he refused basically to play for them in the remaining games of the season because his contract was up and he was looking to go elsewhere. Now that divided opinion in football, I thought he was completely out of order. And it maybe took a lot of love and a lot of forgiveness from Eddie Howe to forgive him. And he was expecting to see a player that he didn't want to see the old traits, shall we say, that might have been under the surface. And as soon as he saw them, he said, right, okay, you're not going to be a part of my football club. Maybe you could say that's become personal, but, you know, it's about what you do on the pitch, and it's up to the manager's got every right to pick the players and have the players at the football club that he wants. And clearly there's no future for him at that club now.
And you're right, it was Eddie Howe who'd taken Ryan Fraser to Bournemouth. And then he didn't want to play for Bournemouth.
Well, that would have disappointed you. Think about
he wanted to go to Newcastle.
He took him there. He nurtured him. He developed him, and then suddenly he makes a call like that when you would almost be like a son, or you treat him like a son, and you feel let down. And then when he comes, okay, I'm going to fight that. I'm going to resist that temptation to say, do you know what? You're not a part of my future. He's done that. He's given him opportunities, and now it seems as if something's happened in the background. He's not pulling his weight. So therefore, he's not going to play a part in the future of Newcastle football.
Simon, not that anybody did, but nobody should think that Eddie Howe's a soft touch here. Does he have a future at the club? No, it doesn't look like it.
No, I think that it's funny how things go around, isn't it? In the end of the day, everything equalises out. You get to find out what people really are about. I made some very strong, not the most eloquent of comments about.
You weren't the most complimentary about him.
No, I wasn't, and I was right about him because I think he's one of those players that you simply do not want in your dressing room if you want to achieve anything meaningful. We can all achieve things when things are going our way. It's about adversity. When you club together is when things aren't going your way. Ryan Fraser didn't fancy staying at Bournemouth because it was in that COVID season. There were challenges about contract extensions and people playing after their June 30 contract dates, and he didn't want any of it. Some would suggest that hang on a second, he's out of contract, then by definition he should want to look after himself. Easily dealt with. They could have insured him past the June 30 date and made sure that his career was protected. He didn't want to. He wanted to do precisely what he wanted to do. And I called him a rather unfortunate name. I retain the right to remain in that perspective because I think he's shown his true colours. And Eddie Howe has served him up. Or more to the point, he's served himself up because he is what he is. And ultimately, when you're in a situation where Newcastle are, where you want everybody focusing in the right direction, you're in an irresistible place with massive enthusiasm. You don't want a passenger. You don't want somebody that's not prepared to meet the standards of the manager. And there may be some legacy. People are human beings. You've got to have a tremendously forgiving character. This isn't the Christian on the road to Damascus. This is somebody sitting there looking at it going, well, actually, you let me down here before. You let me in a situation where I'm in a set scenario where I wanted your help before, you didn't give it.
Are you surprised Eddie's left it this long? And it's just over a year. Is that he survived this long even?
I don't think Eddie Howe thinks he's particularly relevant. I think Eddie Howe's got the embarrassment of riches of having a decent group of players that he can turn to, and Ryan Fraser's far down the pecking order. So he's actually waited to the time when he's in ultimate ascendancy. He's in complete control of his own destiny. He's got a playing squad. I don't need to prostitute myself anymore with you. You're done.
Actually, the more I think about it, listening to Simon there, Martin, it tells me more about Ryan Fraser, although I don't personally know him. It tells me more about him than it tells me about Eddie. How can Ryan Fraser not want to be a part of what's going on at Newcastle United? How can Ryan Fraser not want to show the likes of Eddie Howe, Jason Tindall and Graeme Jones look no further I will feature in this huge ride that we're on, and I will play my part in
Well,
trying to get us to the very peak of the Premier League.
Yeah, I'd like to have been a fly on the wall when they first met up, when Eddie first went back to the club, to say, and what the player was saying at that point, because he would have actually made a major apology. Because, to be honest, it's unforgivable, isn't it? When to leave a football club, and you think about the growth of that football club, and he played a major part in that. Eddie Howe,
he's
obviously,
a good player, by the way,
and the player.
He's a good player.
He's had his injury problems at the start of this season, Jim. Maybe he's just not pulling his weight. He's not grafting. Maybe he feels, deep down, the manager has not forgiven him, and there's no way through. But it's just that Eddie's lost patience, and he can do that. He's got really good players there, and the thing is now, where will he turn up, Ryan Fraser? Where will he go?
Well, that's a good
Who will
question,
take him?
Martin.
Well,
He's 29 now.
I think also you characterise it in such a way. I would suggest to you that he probably does want to be part of it, but on his terms, on the way that he wants to be part of it. And unfortunately, there's a new sheriff in town, and Eddie Howe wants it to be, as a manager should, his standards, his level of application, his level of expectance. He's got to overcome the correct scenario that he created, and he probably hasn't done enough. So he's reaped what he's sown, and it's quite nice to see it every now and again, isn't it? Because most often than not, you don't see people getting their comeuppance.
But this is manna from heaven for you, Simon, because again, it depicts the reputational damage that many footballers can afflict themselves with. I mean, on the surface of this, it seems that Fraser has brought about this situation himself. And that's why so many people, and I'm sorry to say it, Martin, so many people around the country do not hold footballers in the highest esteem.
Well, we must be
light.
careful not to judge everybody by one particular individual, right? And in this instance, Ryan Fraser is the captain of his own ship. He's an island in his own right.
Yeah.
So he has the ability.
There aren't too many who've done what he did.
And I'm sure. There's quite a few high-profile ones that do precisely what they want. Riyad Mahrez deciding to down tools because Leicester City, the club that gave him an opportunity that he thrived and survived with, ultimately he wanted to go to Man City.
Huge
to down
transfer fee
tools.
remunerating that
And
loss.
that's fine.
But
But
Mahrez didn't cover himself in glory, man.
You can go back through the history of time. You can go from Robbie Savage wanting to go further down the M1, apparently nearer to where he wanted to be, or nearer to home, and he ended up in some Blackburn or something.
But this is a different level, though, isn't it? Because when your club really needs you in those in those rescue matches, he basically turned his back on them because he didn't want to play without any.
Well, you were unswerving at the time.
Well, no, because I thought it was poor, and I thought he was, and I said to Brucey at the time, and Brucey defended him. I don't think Brucey would defend him now.
No,
Brucey was the one that signed him and had him play for him, because I think the player's probably got, the heart of a pea in terms of where he thinks he should be and what he thinks he should do. Guaranteed there'll be a backstory. Guaranteed his agent will be telling those that Eddie Howe and he didn't get on at Bournemouth, and he's been a victim of Eddie Howe in 2 incarnations. So he'll find himself parked somewhere else, because that's what happens.
It was never going to work, Jim, was it really? Let's be fair.
Probably not. But you would have thought Ryan Fraser, having got the move that he wanted, would want to make it work.
Well, you wouldn't want to pull me up on it. If I've made a mistake once, I'm not going to make another one. I'm making sure I'm toeing the line and working hard.
Exactly.
And if he wants to throw me out, let it be on ability and not really my work rate.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.